intro?
He is. I'm waiting on him.
There you go.
Thank you guys all for coming. And first of all, I want to say, if you can't see me, move to a place that you can.
You're also on Blue Jeans.
This is a very important meeting that we're having. And our most important asset at our company is our people. What's one of our other really important assets? Our bulls. What are our bulls worth? When a bull gets to a production stall, the minimum value that we've got in that bull is about $75,000. Those bulls go all the way up to bulls that stand in this facility of over $6 million. But $75,000 is the littlest bull that walks into a production stall here. It costs us $75,000 to get him there, and that's the cheap one. The only other things you can find that are that valuable are racehorses. Anybody who took a shovel to the leg of a racehorse, what would they do to you? Well, what I wanted, and the other part I want to protect today is our company. We come to work every day. You don't ever sit around and worry if we're going to get a paycheck. We don't ever sit around and worry whether we're going to close the company. We're in great financial position. Yeah, you hear occasionally we get a little tight on cash flow, but our members are sitting on over $30 million, so we're just fine. So the things we got to protect ourselves from are protect ourselves, protect our bulls, and let's protect our company, which is what I want to discuss today. And there's three parts to this conversation about what we're talking about. And one is very few companies, if any in the world, can get as much semen out of our bulls. Why? Care. First, it's how we care for them when they're at the heifer center. Second of all, it's the care that we give them when they come here. Third of all, it's guys like Greg Marsh with 40 years of experience in how we collect bulls. When you look at the number of cells we have per bull, every company would like to know what we do and how we do it. Some of it's our extended. Some of it's how we roll our ABs. That's why we continually try to do better and better. But if you're a startup company, wouldn't you like to know how that's done? Because what's a bull that's like Legacy, that you could get another 15% more semen, what's that do to your bottom line? Not at all. So those are trade secrets. We don't patent them. We don't tell anybody. The reason we don't is then it just tells everybody how they work. So people would like to get those. The second part is we have animal terrorist groups out there. The media refers them to as animal welfare. Well, if you're animal welfare, why would you burn down a $200,000 hog facility or burn down a poultry farm in the name of animal welfare? And when you look at the attacks that have been made on Fair Oaks, or Gary Conklin. I've been to both of their farms, and they do it right. And in both cases, or in one case, we know that the person that did the abuse was encouraged by the guy doing the video to do the abuse. And Gary's going to give you his perception, and right now they're investigating that the same thing happened out there. The other thing they do is they come in, they'll encourage abuse or video abuse or video an animal that's in distress. When you got kids or animals, there are times when you're going to be able to video them in some distress. And they even do voice link overs with a cow that's calving, and they say, well, this is what goes on in dairies. Because it's not about the truth. It's about what they want to perceive. And I'm telling you right now, we're a target. That's why we're having this meeting. In addition to, we have to manage ourselves and how we treat bulls. We have a responsibility that if we see animal abuse, we have to report it. We have a system. Everybody here signs a contract to do that because that's our welfare going forward. The second part is we need to protect ourselves and our trade secrets from these folks because they're out to do us harm. So there's, with what happened at Four Oaks Farms, or Fair Oaks Farms, we have taken a really look at everything we do, and we just need to continue to do it better. That's not different than anything we've done. The other part is, how do we hold these animal rights groups, like HSUS? I don't know if you are familiar, but they went after Ringling Brothers and Barney Bailey Circus for mistreatment. Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus proved that HSUS enticed and endorsed the people to do the abuse and won a multi-million-dollar settlement against HSUS. Now, the papers don't print that. And, you know, it seems like you get on the front cover when the abuse is reported, and you find yourself on, what, page 7 of Part C, next to Uncle Mel died yesterday, that nobody reads about what actually happens when they find out the truth. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what our responsibilities are as employees. And but I first want you to listen to Gary Conklin, our next door neighbor. They've had a dairy that's been in the farm for generations, going back to I think 1917. They sell cattle over 22 states, and they've done that since about 1920. Now, when you sell cattle, we got a few dairymen in the room. When you buy a cow, the first thing you're going to do is make sure she's healthy, she's unblemished, she's all these things. And they've done that for years and have a great reputation. We get the animal rights people come in, and he'll explain the situation, try to create a whole different picture, because our audience isn't the other farmers. The audience is all the people drinking milk because they want to get them to drink soybean milk or pea milk or whatever it is. And then we're going to talk about our response. So you'll find out what happens to you. We have members in this audience or in the audience that's later that also has been attacked by these animal rights groups on their Facebook posts. But then we're going to talk about what our responsibilities are as an organization. We know how to take care of animals, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that how we treat them, and we have a responsibility to report it. And we're going to put it in a position that if something happens, where they're going to try to take our organization down or attack it, that if they're inducing people to commit crimes, that we have a position to go back and protect our company. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Gary Conklin, our next door neighbor, and he'll share with you his experience with his situation. Gary?
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Good to be here. I'm Gary Conklin. We're just 2 miles up the road, Conklin Dairy Cattle Sales. And our business model has been freshen out heifers, get them milking well, and then sell them on to other dairies. That has been what we've done actually since 1919, that my grandfather started the company. But on May 25th, 2010, and I was out buying cattle about 75 miles northwest of here, I received a phone call from a reporter from the Dayton Business Journal. And she asked if I had any comment on a Mercy for Animals video that would be released in the next hour if I had a comment. Well, I didn't know about it. I didn't know it was going to happen, but at that point I knew it was not going to be good. Something big, there was a big problem. So I came on back to the farm. I was out an hour or so, and on my way back, I got a call from Ohio Department of Ag, and they said that they'd seen the video, they knew it was coming out, and they recommended how to handle the situation and to begin that process. Well, so we did that. I talked with them some. Got home that night, home from the office, and then we watched the video. It had been released, and we absolutely couldn't believe it. We could not believe treatment that some of our animals were receiving, or calves and some cows, and couldn't believe it. And we were stunned. So at that point, and it was 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, I called my attorney first. And then I called the Sheriff's Department, Union County Sheriff's Department, told them, I think they were already aware of the situation, but I told them, and I also asked if a deputy could be at the farm at 6 o'clock the next morning to assist in relieving employment of one particular employee. There are two former employees in this discussion. One is Billy Joe Gregg. Billy Joe Gregg is from a dairy farm in northern Michigan. He joined the military, fought in Iraq. He came back here and he was in the area, and so he was actually the guy that was hitting the cows and mistreating calves. And the other guy was Jason Smith. That was his name, but he is an individual. He has 10 names. He has 10 names, everything, all the references. When I hired him, I think it was in March of 2010, I called all the references that he put down on his application. Oh yeah, he's a good guy. He's a nice young guy. He does a really good job. Jason Smith was the animal activist working for Mercy for Animals. And he has done that same thing from Maine to California. And unfortunately, he's done a lot of that. Well, so those are the two players. And Jason Smith, the animal activist, he had a camera that kind of came through like a button or something on his shirt. And he wore his jacket or something. It was like early spring. So, but anyway, he took about 22 hours of video. During that 22 hours, he had about less than 2 minutes of bad video. The rest of it was just guys scraping lots, cows eating feed, and everything was fine there. But 6 o'clock the next morning, Billy Joe Gregg showed up for work. The deputy sheriff, 2 of them were there. And I brought him in the office immediately, relieved him of duty, and the deputy sheriffs took a hold of him right then, took him into one of our other smaller offices. The investigation began. They took him out of there in handcuffs, and he went straight up to the Union County Sheriff's Department. And the investigation, which included Ohio Department of Agriculture as well as the Union County Humane Society, and what they do in that situation, they deputize members of the Humane Society. So there were about 6 or 7 people investigating. They went all over the farm. They looked all over at all the cows and calves. And then the process of interviewing all employees at the Union County Sheriff's Office. So really for about 30 days, everyone had to go in, a lot of interviews. They went through, like that 2 minutes of video, they went through that with each individual employee, asked questions. It was quite a long process. In the end, there were, at the end of the investigation, everything was turned over to the prosecuting attorney, David Phillips, Union County prosecuting attorney. And he presented all the evidence to the Union County grand jury. The Billy Joe Gregg, who was actually hitting the animals, he ended up pleading guilty to most of the charges. There were like 11 or 12 charges, and he ended up pleading guilty to most of those. And he had fines and went to jail for a number of years. So the animal activist, Jason Smith, he was not charged, even though, and he even said it in his testimony, he encouraged, he even did a little bit of himself, but somehow he was not, I don't know why he wasn't charged, but he wasn't. He also said in his sworn testimony, every day he would call into headquarters at Mercy for Animals and say, I got a minute or two of video. Do you want me to come on out now and pull out of the operation and we release it or stay? And for 2 or 3 weeks, headquarters of Mercy for Animals said stay, try and get him to do more, try and get Billy Joe Gregg to do more. So the animal rights groups don't necessarily care about the animals as much. They're a part in their ultimate goal of a vegan nation, no beef, no milk, no eggs, nothing. But the Billy Joe Gregg was charged and went to jail, paid a fine. Jason Smith was let off. And no other employees, no one else was charged. And the end of that grand jury process was released on May 25th. The end of the grand jury process was right after the 4th of July that summer. So, really during that whole time, it was at the sheriff's office, at the attorney, all that, for 6-7 weeks, that's all it was. So, after that, after dust had cleared, we changed our employee manual, and we added, really in the past, previously we had things, drug and alcohol, or hours or holiday hours, all those stuff. It was kind of all, we combined all that. We put it all together, and also we added a large section for animal handling. That was broken into 4 areas: milking parlor and holding pen, also trucks, unloading trucks or loading, also calf care, and that calf care was detailed all the way from when the calf was immediately born and getting the colostrum in that calf till the calf left the farm. So all that was in that category. The final category was down cows, non-ambulatory cows, or something that was sick. So all that was spelled out in the handbook. Everyone had to sign every page, fully understand it. That was a part of our process moving forward from that day. Shortly after that, we put that together very quickly. So, our hiring practices changed. All those things became different. And, I would say, I would admit prior to that, we may not have checked out people quite as thoroughly as we should have. I mean, we always made a good attempt, called references, did all those things. In Billy Joe Gregg's case, all the military stuff, can't get a lot of information just because they don't give it out. But talking to people in Michigan, where he's from, it's all fine. But so we've changed that process. So the thing of the animal rights activist groups they are much more on the march today than they have been in the past. They are, this 10, 15 years ago, they would create, and kind of what they are when someone sees a calf being hurt or anything, that is a mind bomb. That creates a reaction. Today, that reaction going to drive people to a different area in the grocery store. So now those people, 10 years ago, a family that would buy 5 gallons of milk a week for their kids, now they can just as easily get soy milk or almond milk. There are a lot of other options. Meat, same thing. So now, when a situation like Fair Oaks happens, that is a very well-run operation, that they do things correctly, but they somehow something happened there, and so impactful with a big company that is clearly one of the top 5 agritourism places in the nation, that absolutely impacts consumers. And so that's why the animal rights groups feel like, you know what, we can do something big successful companies, big successful dairies, and we can have and see an immediate impact. So
Duty. Milk. And what was, you didn't talk about the impact of your business and your family.
okay, well, actually, the biggest impact, and if this happens to anyone, you will have, if someone like Fair Oaks, they will get calls, emails, hate mail, letter, faxes, everything for the next 20 years. You will never get away from it. And probably if you have a spouse, they're in the same boat. If you have kids, that summer, that when it happened to us at the end of May, our son was at Ohio State ag fraternity, and the animal rights groups went and found him. He was going to graduate in a week or two. Well, somehow Allison was at Wittenberg and teaching little college. They will. So the animal rights groups that have hundreds of millions of dollars in their budget, they have people that they pay all day long, year round, to harass. So they will harass you, they will bother you, and I think in July I've only received 2 or 3 phone calls, but June was probably 10, and I wouldn't play one here. I wouldn't play one of those things because
Does those include death threats?
oh yes, death threats. The death threats, which there would be in the that would be in the hundreds and hundreds, and including in June. So
were you able to sell your milk after that?
we were not able to sell the milk, so we immediately lost our milk contract.
They pick it in the stores because they don't take milk. So.
Yeah, so in the animal rights group system, they will find out where the milk, everything is sold. They will go there, and they will hire picketers. Whatever, somehow they'll get picketers to that store, and so they will. So it becomes very hard to sell milk or anything.
Have you been able to celebrate?
Nope, have not. Not. How it goes.
UDFA?
Actually, we were Minerva Cheese. So, there any other questions, or
You acted pretty quick on this as far as phone calls. Would you do anything different, or would you call somebody?
Oh, I did call Hinda Mitchell. So, really, looking back, I probably wouldn't once the crisis began, I don't think I would change much. One of the things I did also that next day, that next morning, I hired Hinda Mitchell, which is a crisis management thing, because the video had gone viral. It was in every country. I mean, it was on the news in Tokyo, every place. I mean, it was all over the place. So, so that, I think that is a very, very important part. Once it does happen, to have some type of a crisis, because I mean, it is purely a crisis. It is purely a crisis, and also management for safety. I mean, we were absolutely threatened in our home. They will know. I mean, we had to have for probably 6 weeks at our expense, Union County Sheriff's Department. They were sitting out there also in tree line with night goggles, watching for people could be coming. So, that type stuff, especially after an event happens, that's exactly what will happen. They will find you, your spouse, your kids. They do that. The animal rights groups do that, and they feel that they are correct in harassing or hurting people.
My daughters were 9 and 11. How do you explain that? Sheriff has to be in here. So their mode of operation is they find somebody or get somebody in, then they'll try to find somebody that they can get to work with it. They'll take pictures. They stay for 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks trying to show it's a systematic problem and not just a. And consumers don't understand how you handle animals. So that's part of the problem as well, right?
It is. It is. But they want to stay as long as they can, get as much, because that video is extremely valuable. Things that they can, and it happens, and you can tell exactly when Mercy for Animals is having a fundraiser, because or something. From San Francisco one night, I would get 5 phone calls, or Los Angeles, or New York, or in Manhattan. And even though the event happened, it'll be 10 years this next spring. Well, they're still fundraising off that, and people giving the money thing that happened yesterday. So they will continue to do that and use. They definitely want to get as much video as they can, because they can raise a lot of those organizations. I think HSUS has a $220 million budget. They've got dollars to work with. So, any other questions?
Any questions from Blue Jeans? Well, Gary, we thank you for that. So with that, these just came back from the attorney this morning, these 4 policies. Well, the cell phone policy didn't come back, but we're going to reiterate the cell phone policy. So the first one is we now have the animal welfare and prohibition of mistreatment of our bulls or steers. And the main thing that's in there is you cannot ignore or violate this company policy. So you have to, if you're an employee working in the barn, or you have business to be in the barn, you have a duty to protect all of our animals and ensure that they're treated humanely and responsibly. Key is that if you see something, you have to say something within 1 hour. So all supervisors, there's the new humane treatment animal officer posters to post in your area. If you'll grab one of those for your area, I appreciate that on the way out. So basically, it's the supervisor of every barn, anybody on the vet staff, and Dr. Good. If you don't report it, or if you're the one that is doing the abuse, officers will take any and all actions available to it under the law if it's violated, and remedies would include money damages for harm to any bull or steer, the facility, the equipment, or company business reputation, and could also include our legal fees. If you're encouraged or enticed by someone to engage in these practices, you also need to report that within 1 hour. So we need to nip it even before it happens. 2 weeks ago, Friday evening, I was leaving here about 4:40 in the afternoon, and I forgot something in my office, and so I pulled around the pond circle and just run and get it. An older Dodge Caravan was sitting there in the circle. It had just pulled in, and the person was on the phone. I didn't think anything about it. You know, when I came out, they left and went about the business. Well, come to find out, a couple of Jim's crew members, that van came back, and they had their camera out, and they were videotaping Lex Sire's headquarters, the pond, and they drove into the parking lot, and they were videotaping the cars and the turnstile and everything else. Don't know what their business was, so if you see something of that nature, you need to report that immediately, and you can come to HR or whomever.
You reported it to police.
I called the Union County Sheriff's Office. They came down, they took the report. We had a partial plate number. The plate we gave, it didn't come back to that van, but it did come back to a Honda in this area, but we don't know if there's any relationship there. So I asked them, what should a person do? Because there's some of you that feel comfortable just going up to the person and saying, you know, what's your business if you don't recognize the person. But the Union County Sheriff said, you don't have to do that. You can pick up 911 and call, or pick up and call 911. They said they'd rather come on a false pretense. Now, don't be calling for anybody that just turn around the driveway, but you know, but you know, if you think something suspicious there. So I'm going to ask for all employees to sign the animal welfare and prohibition of mistreatment of bulls or steers. The next one is confidential business information, and Jay talked about it earlier. Our practices of collecting bulls, it becomes our confidential business information. So that's why we're re-signing that, and that's been restated in there. And then the next one's the prohibition of gratuities and prohibition of photography and other recording. So you're not allowed to take gratuities from vendors that seem excessive or any outside parties, and that includes even a coworker. Because as Gary said, he had 2 employees, so we don't know if Billy Joe really got anything, but we do know a piece of property showed up in his driveway one day. How it got there, no one knows, because there was no proof of exchange of money or whatever, but we can jump to a conclusion if you want. And then prohibition of photography and other recording. So you're not allowed to be taking pictures of the bulls and the steers without prior permission from your supervisor or the other people listed in here. If you witness any authorized photography and videotaping or recording the bulls, you have to report that also within 1 hour, or you're subject to disciplinary action as well. And the last one is a cell phone policy, because all cell phones, unless you're like my dad with an old flip phone, they can take pictures and stuff. So if you use your cell phone in your area, it should not be used to be taking photos of our confidential business information. Are there any questions on these policies? Yep. So yep, you need to sign 4 times, and I'm going to ask this group when we leave, because the next group will be coming in. We'll be setting up a collection box back here, and I'm going to ask that you exit through the side door where Dr. Tank's at. Okay.
What questions do you have?
Oh, the second copy is for you to take, so you have a copy of all the policies. You can sign your own copy if you like.
Comments or questions?
Oh, thanks.
Guys, it's a great question. So what if you think, you know, it's 94 degrees out there. I'm going to pick on Jack. There's nobody more loyal than Jack here. But what if Jack's wearing a long trench coat in 95 degrees? Because he's got his little camera in there, or you see something that is just odd. How do you report that? You go right to your supervisor, or you go right to Tony, or you come right to me. There are now cell apps that we can get that will pick up people taking picture, video, or if they have video on them, that you can get now. We're not going to run around and do that, but if there's something suspicious that you see, or you see somebody, you're working the night shift, or you're working the early morning shift, and somebody kind of driving out as you're driving in, or if you're going to approach one of these vehicles, also not a bad idea, just as you're walking out, turn your video camera on, get his face. You know, if it's nothing, you can just delete it. Well, I just stopped in because I had to pull over and make a phone call. Well, he's way out on the road. Yeah, big deal. They're driving around doing stuff they shouldn't. We had a Pakistani gentleman, I don't know if you can remember this, came in and standing on the fence looking at the bulls back in the, behind the Chichester. They told him to leave, and so he left. But next week, back he came. He just wanted to come and see the bulls, and he was willing to, I think maybe the gate was open, or we didn't have the gate at the time. Finally, we had to call the sheriff and tell him, don't come back. But if you see something suspicious, report it, and we'll investigate it. Many times it'll just be that. You know, we're not, this isn't the Gestapo, but we've got to protect our place to work. You know, I hope everybody agrees, but I think you do. This is kind of a nice place to work. You don't have to worry about coming, you know, whether we got our job tomorrow, but that's just part of it. So if you see something odd like that, or you see one of the guys that's working in the shipping department in the freezing room, and then there's skivvies. That's probably weird too, but but just let your supervisor know if you said. The other thing is, if you receive a phone call from one of these groups or something like that encouraging you on something like this, let your supervisor know. Get as much information when they're talking to you. Because I'm going to guarantee you, as internationally known as we are, as big as we are, we're a target. The other thing I would tell you is we had a group from the Chamber of Commerce at our national meeting here, and they had a group out. We didn't really let them see the bulls, but we told them what we did and how we did it. We told them about how well we treated our bulls back here in Conklin, and one lady that was on the tour, not from the farming community, couldn't understand why we didn't every day turn our bulls out in the pasture so we could go play with each other. Now, I think you know how well that's going to turn out. As long as I used all the statistics about how they would beat each other up, and how she just couldn't get that through her head that they ought to be let out to play in the yard. So this is what we're dealing with on the other end. So there's a part of education, but there's a part of the reason we try to maintain a low profile here is we don't want the attention, but because of how big we are, we have to protect our place.
Maybe I get more of it than most people because there are people that come.
Should we put up no trespassing signs after 5 p.m.? Violators will be prosecuted.
The questions about no trespassing signs, I don't know if you can hear them. So the question was raised whether we should post no trespassing after a certain time.
Other questions? That's a great question.
I'm working on it, Bill. I want to get through the employee meeting today, and then we're going to take for all third parties. So every third party that we deal with will be signing something similar.
Other questions? If you see something from a contractor where they're taking pictures or something, first let them know they can't do that. Secondly, tell your supervisor. Get on that right away. All right, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We got a new group coming in. So.
Yeah. Exit back to the left. And
Yes, please.
thank you, everybody. And anybody that's on Blue Jeans that takes a packet of the policies, I will email them out to you.
Right at our office too. I can take it to her. Okay. It's back.